Now, you've heard me talk more than once about being on Twitter. Today's story this week, what would Shakespeare tweet? Lots of folks at CNN talk about the website that makes an art of brevity, all messages limited to 140 characters. In fact, Twitter has become so embedded in the culture here that Jon Stewart had a little fun with the subject the other night.
And by the way, why do I have to follow CNN on Twitter? If I want to follow CNN, I can follow them on CNN.
I'm talking about Twitter. This is Time Magazine, and it's on the cover. Twitter, which I think is fabulous.
Tell us what you think about President Obama's speech. Leave us a comment on my blog.
Why don't you tell us what you think? Tweet us.
Hey, tell me what you're doing this weekend. I want to hear from you.
CNN has basically given up. They've actually put the power of the news in your hands.
A lot of you are weighing in tonight. Here's what Bugsack says. Fighting for the life of children should not include killing a doctor.
Whenever I'm troubled with the difficult moral question of abortion, I think to myself, what would Bugsack say?
So are we going a bit overboard with this Twitter business? Joining us now from Atlanta is CNN anchor and Twitter fan Rick Sanchez. You just saw him in that Daily Show bit. And in Orlando, where he's covering the NBA Finals, Gregg Doyel, columnist for CBS Sportsline. All right, Sanchez, so Jon Stewart basically says you're a wuss and you're just filling up your program with these brief bursts from the masses.
Here's what's going on. There is no question that there's a group of people out there who have formed communities and they want to be connected. What could possibly be wrong with us wanting to connect to people who want to connect to us? It just makes all the sense in the world. For the longest time, we who call ourselves journalists have really been a bit of a closed community, and I think what social media is doing is allowing us to talk to people for the very first time and give them an opportunity to talk back to us.
But Rick, is it really two-way communication when so many people write in? Isn't it more like talk radio where only a few callers get through?
It's very different from talk radio. In talk radio, you're lucky if you can get in, and usually the one person who gets in is chosen because they're going to make a lot of noise, and the host usually doesn't go home and continue the conversation with all of those people on talk radio. Twitter and social media is very different. I use it because within there I find reliable sources, and I also find consensus builders. So I get, look, social media has made me a better journalist, and it's made my show a better newscast.
All right,
I'm convinced of that.
Let me toss the ball to Gregg Doyel. I want to quote something you wrote about Twitter, and let me make sure I get this precisely. You called it annoying as hell.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. Yeah, it's Twitter is the teeny bopperification of America, the dumbification of America. LOL. It's one more example of us going down the tubes. We're already falling behind in science and math, the rest of the world. Let's go ahead and fall behind in English, too. Why the hell not?
Why do you call it the dumbification of America? And I'll let Rick Sanchez in here in a minute. It seems to me, as somebody who's on that side a lot, there's a lot of smart people on there, depending on who you follow, and you are underestimating what you can learn in terms of links and commentary and breaking news. In other words, there are lots of different conversations going on there, and you seem to think it's a bunch of tongue-tied teenagers.
There's too many conversations going on in the world. I think part of the problem is there's so many things to listen to, we choose to listen now to nothing. You can't possibly hear everything, so let's just listen to nothing and play Sudoku all day long. I think we need to limit a couple of these conversations and cut out these corporate Christmas cards of communication, which is all Twitter is. It's not one-to-one, it's 1 to 10 million. I've got no time for that myself. Get off of my lawn!
Well, you know, I can't help but accuse Gregg of being extremely priggish and overweening when he says that. I mean, that's like saying that journalism is bad because there are some people out there who write ridiculous columns or some newscasters who say ridiculous things. I mean, you have to kind of look at this thing in its totality. There are people out there who are talking to each other and talking to us. They have provided on my particular newscast bits of information that I wouldn't otherwise have been able to furnish the rest of my viewers. They've also given me opportunity to connect with regular people, not just us talking, not just journalists talking, or not just the so-called newsmakers, but what real people in America and around the world are thinking about a particular story. Iran in particular is a story that hits that right on the buzzer. Here you have an opportunity to talk to people about what they're thinking about what's going on in Tehran, as I did on my newscast the other day. And then I was able to go through Gmail and interview one of them on the air.
Right.
I wouldn't have been able to do that had it not been for social media.
But Greg, you seem to feel that it's particularly kind of an ego boost for celebrities and TV types to amass big numbers of people.
He's right. He's right about that.
Well, Greg, let me hear from Greg.
Yeah, there are definitely media applications that are more mature and sensible than Lance Armstrong telling people at 5:30 in the morning, I just woke up and had a Denver omelet. You know, if that's what Twitter is, then that's ridiculous. The media has applications, I get that, but there's so many now Twitter feeds and Twitter whatevers getting sent out. I sat next to a guy at Game 3 of the NBA Finals the other night who was spent the whole game, not watching the game, reading his Twitter updates, looking at Twitter updates. He was getting updated all day long. Eventually it becomes white noise. We're going to hear none of it.
Well, and what happens is, and I think Greg has a point there, all right? Just like I just called him overweening and priggish a minute ago, now I'm going to call him brilliant. I think there you go, see? And anyway, I think there is too much attention being paid by us in the media, as usual, where instead of looking at the serious nature of something, we start looking at the fact that Ashton Kutcher is doing it. And look, Oprah is doing it. And that becomes the story about Twitter, which sends a message which isn't really what it's all about.
Well, let me jump in and ask you.
That's bothersome. He's right.
Let me jump in and ask you a journalistic question. We in the news business used to do man-on-the-street interviews, call people, knock on doors, and obviously there's still some of that. But is there a danger this is becoming a lazy way to have the illusion of being connected to the public?
I love that possibility, yeah, and let me jump in real quick and say that it is totally the lazification in addition to the teener bobification and the dumbification of America. It's the lazification of America, and we're just flailing. The journalists are flailing. Look, we were all behind the times on the internet 10 years ago. We all missed it. We all thought it was big. We had no idea how big it is now. Everything that comes along now, we jump on it with two hands and 2 feet. Let's jump on Twitter. You know what Twitter is? Twitter is the pet rock of the 21st century.
You are 150% wrong, Greg, and here's why. The opportunity to actually go on a website where you can talk to different people, and there is so much sharing and connecting going on there that they make you privy or informed about something you wouldn't have otherwise known. Last night when I went on and I started Twittering about what was going on in Iran, I learned as much about the situation in Iran as I would have watching, frankly, my network, the BBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post combined. And here's why. Social media allows those people to link these URLs to whatever it just has been written. So it's, hey, Greg, did you just read this story that crossed 2 seconds ago on the Washington Post? Take a look at this. Look what they said about what happened in Tehran.
I appreciate that as well.
That's interesting.
By the way, URLs is a web lingo for linking to a story. But Greg, you know, it is one thing for Ashton Kutcher to get more than 1 million followers as he has. But, you know, Anna Marie Cox, who was on this program earlier, 600,000 followers. Slate's John Dickerson, 586,000 followers. So people must get something out of trying to follow the feeds of these journalists.
They do, but I think the people that would subscribe to a journalist will subscribe not just to one. We're fooling ourselves if we think they're subscribing to me only. They're subscribing to me and you and him and them, and eventually they're going to subscribe to the point. There's going to be a diminishing returns point. There's going to be a tipping point where it's just a little bit too much. So I can see Twitter at the very outset being okay for some people, but I see as the trend goes on, crash and burn.
Well, let me just respond to that, because I think there's something going on, Howard, that people should be aware of.
I got 20 seconds, Rick.
No, that's fine. This will be real easy. Over the next year, what's going to happen is you're going to see more focus and more filtering in Twitter to dissipate the argument that Greg makes, where he's right. It's too busy. There's too much stuff going on. There will be a way where you can get in there and say, look, I only want to talk to people about the NBA Finals, or I only want to talk to people about Iran, and you go.
NBA Finals, Greg, Orlando Magic, Game 5 tonight. Any chance of coming back against the Lakers?
I hope so, because I like to travel. I like to go to LA.
He doesn't want this.
It's all about me.
All right, gentlemen.
Teach him to hit a free throw, will you?
All right, guys. Up next, thank you very much. The new